the Sydney Roundworld.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TooFatLardies Oddcast. Tonight, I'm joined by two men at the very heart of Lard, even. The Kate and Melania of Wargaming, Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Guys, gentlemen, welcome back to the Oddcast. Trust you're well?
Yes, thank you. We're both wearing matching outfits made by our favourite top designer.
but no hats, unfortunately.
No
hats. I'm in a prison cell this morning. My body and my mind are in a prison cell. At a very late night last night at my mother-in-law's birthday party, and all the great people from her life were there. Sydney, Vlad the Impaler, the Headless Horseman,
Dr. Mengele,
the ghost of Richard III. They were all there. Various Catholic priests that have tried to exorcise her over the years. They were all in the corner.
Well, that was just her good friends, was it? I'd hate to see her enemies. Anyway, well, I know you've both been busy, so hopefully in the next hour we'll have a chance for you to tell me what you've all been up to and to regale the listeners with fun tales of the last couple of months, because now we're very much towards the end of summer and looking towards the autumn, or as our American cousins would say, the fall. And before we move on to talking about the big issue, we're going to find out what you've both been up to. So, Richard, I know you've had some close encounters of a sawdusty kind of We Have Ways Fest. So tell everyone about that. I know they'll be thrilled to know.
Yes, shit in a bucket fest, as I like to call it. It's very interesting. We Have Ways Fest was great fun, actually. And what I really liked about it is a kind of upside down event, really. I really enjoyed talking to people at the grassroots who were really there and interested in talking to us. And I didn't enjoy talking to the top celebrities because they didn't want to talk to us. And I rather like that because I couldn't give a shit about top level celebrities. Whereas I really do like talking to people who are intrigued by what we're doing or people who are enthused by what we were doing. And interestingly, it was because it wasn't a wargaming event, it was wargames adjacent, and we were there doing our stuff literally in a part of the show that was kind of adjacent to the show. We didn't get huge footfall, but the footfall we did get were people who were really interested. And we had some great conversations with people. It was really good. However, there were some aspects of it that were quite unusual, like the toilet arrangements. They had sawdust toilets where after you completed what you were there to do, you just poured a cupful of sawdust on it and walked away, which is a great concept on day one. But apparently by day 4, it was looking like the pyramids of Egypt, but not quite in such an attractive manner. I must admit I avoided them and was glad that we were staying off-site where we had proper facilities to use. But yeah, it was interesting that you got to experience aspects of World War II that you never thought you would, like having to shit in a bucket. But yeah, great fun. I mean, just as I say, completely topsy-turvy. You know, you at a war game show, we're talking to hundreds of people who grab a few seconds of our time. There we were talking to dozens of people who were able to have proper conversations, and that was much more rewarding in many ways. Hard yards though, 4 days, Christ. Honestly,
yeah, it's the first time you'd done all 4, wasn't it? It was tiring, you know, from setting up on the We set up on the Thursday, and then it's all day Friday, all day Saturday, and then kind of most of Sunday. Although Sunday was a bit dead for us because the weather was on the turn, and the only attractions on the Sunday are kind of in the main battle arena, really. So Sunday was a lighter day, but it was full on. We had a little posse of people who helped us and supported us. So thank you very much to those people for helping us out. People did sterling work around the table again, because people want to come and disturb and talk, and you don't want to stop talking to them because of playing the game. So every time somebody asks a question, you duck out the game, have the conversation, and then duck in again when you need to. And that works really well as a model of keeping the engagement going with those that are around the table.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I was inspired by the conversations I had with people, which is great. It's a different slant. What are you doing? What are you doing is very. You don't get that question at Salute or Colours. What a woman said to me. Well, she didn't. She said to one of the lads, and I thought I wish she'd asked me. She said, "Why are men so strange?" And I thought that was maybe a comment on her experience over the whole weekend. I thought that was quite amusing. But yeah, I enjoyed it. But my God, I need to clone me if I do it again in future. I have to have a different me for each day, because by the end of it, I really felt I needed to be hospitalised.
Do you think you'd go back again, or is it, or it's 3 times a charm, as they say?
It's too early to say. Too early to say. I'm still too knackered from it. There were aspects of it I enjoyed. It's cost. We like to go the flag. We like to go and fly the flag for wargaming at all these different events where we're outward facing and looking at a different audience. But there's a huge cost involved in that. There's a real serious cost involved in that. You know, it's not 5 figures, but it is 4 figures. And you think actually. It's great to be the flag bearer for wargaming, but maybe somebody else could contribute to it. And because we didn't go there to sell stuff. In fact, I sold a couple of rule sets to people, but I gave more rule sets away to youngsters who were interested. And I just went, look, here you go, lads, have a copy of the rules, go away, have a look, see what you think. So it wasn't, as a commercial venture, it's a financial loser, but not everything's about that, is it? We've got a great hobby and we really want to promote it. So sometimes you think we'll take the loss because it's worth it.
Yeah, and the overlap between the communities is massive as well. The number of people there who are already playing Chain of Command is quite substantial, and that's not my socks. The first time I went, I wasn't really expecting that, but this time round, even more of them came out of the closet, as it were, to come around the table and say, "I too play Chain of Command. I'm a wargamer, or I'm a lapsed wargamer." The overlap is really quite significant, and yet it still maintains it's a kind of hobby. Serious historian centric, I think, would be one of the things it sells itself as. And actually, there are some other fun things for around as well for people to get involved in. And the books are there, the hardware is great, the reenactors are really good. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who would look too great in a battle dress, but the guys who do it at We Have Waves Fest, they know what they're doing. They know their stuff. I was talking to the guys from the glider pilot regiment. They are superbly knowledgeable about their topic, and they kind of live their history, and you get some small details from them. Talking to the guys who are running the recce jeeps, and about the doctrine of using those, and so some little snippets you can get through those conversations. You wouldn't get those at a wargame show. We don't tend to see those anymore at wargame shows. So the overlap's really quite interesting. It's a worthwhile event from that side of things. Plus, the events and the talks are really good if you get to go to one. So it's 3 years now that I've been going. We gave one talk in the first year, Rich and I. I haven't been to any other talks. So this year we lined up 2 talks. One of them we didn't get to go to because we had a nightmare of getting off site back to the accommodation and missed the talk that was late in the day, which is Mike Peters, which I was really disappointed about because I really wanted to listen to him talking about Operation Varsity. And then the second one was talking about Arnhem again. And sadly, one of the members of the audience had a medical emergency halfway through, and the talk had to be curtailed. So I still haven't managed to get a bloody talk under my belt at We Have Waves Fest. So if we go back again next year, I am damn well making sure I get one in.
Yeah, I think we learn every time we do it, don't we? And I think we if we do it, we'll do it, but we'll do it slightly differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And each time you tweak. And you just try and get the ratio from signal to noise a bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, good fun. Undoubtedly, it's the first time I've been for the whole duration, because in previous years it's conflicted with colours, and I've had to go and not only trade, but I have to take a day out to build the trade stand and all that. And so for me, it's been frantic: turn up, do this, rush away, come back, turn up. But this time I got an opportunity to really enjoy it. The catering there is brilliant. The lager on offer was good. My favourite lager, masquerading as something else, which was great. But actually, I didn't really get an opportunity to have much because we were too busy. But there was lots going on. I'm not really into old vehicles. I'm not really into the internal combustion engine and looking at old vehicles. I know what tanks look like, but I was interested to handle some of the firearms there, just to get an idea of the feel and balance of them, and that was interesting. So yeah, there's definitely something for everybody there. But we found ourselves largely tied to what we were doing. But that's good, because that's what we're there for. Let's not pretend we're there as a punter. We're not. We're there as ambassadors for our hobby. So
yeah, and a shout out also to Fraser Mack, who stayed with us in the officers' quarters and who made us. Well, whose recipe for fried eggs is probably quite dangerous. I don't think health and safety would pass his methodology for frying eggs, but he cooked us a very good breakfast both mornings. So I appreciate that. And
did. Yeah.
And to A. Deacon as well, who really put a lot of work into our table and made it look fantastic. I don't know if you've seen the photos, but we did Normandy table, and Ade really brought the game to life, and it looks superb. So well done to him too.
One of the things that I did was to show a lot of people an image of where the area of the game today on Google Earth, and they all went, "My God, it's a perfect representation." And it was remarkable how those buildings looked exactly like Ade's buildings, and it allowed people who'd never wargamed before to get a comprehension that what we were doing is not sort of line up plastic poplar trees and rolled marbles on it, but we were actually trying to reflect something that happened historically and trying to get an appreciation and learning from it. The other good thing that we did was we were playing big chain of command. We weren't just playing chain of command, we were playing big chain of command, and this gave me an opportunity about 4 or 5 times to play test some of the different mechanisms that we've got with phase line objectives, because that's something really new in the new version of At the Sharp End, because it has morphed. It suddenly, about a month ago, it suddenly took on a life of its own. It should have been out about a month ago, but suddenly we're playing a game with Mike Peters, who came down to Lard Island, and we're doing stuff with phase lines. And I said to Nick, bloody hell, this is bigger than both of us. And we realised that there was an opportunity there to really develop the big chain of command experience into something even more exciting. So we've been working intensely on that over the last month, and being able to run that out 5 games, each with 2 phase lines. So if you like, 10 normal games over the period, really gave us an opportunity to make sure those mechanisms were working. So it was great from that point of view. Yeah.
Well, one more thing, Sid, because I'm sure you'd be keen to move on. I know we've got other things to talk about, but the scenario, Richard, the fact that we're playing a game where you could show the table, you could show people that is the key. I'm convinced to credibility at these kind of events, because if it's just a game that's got no story behind it, you're not bringing the history to life. It just becomes a game. It just becomes a kind of Warhammer event. You've got to have the credibility, I think, for that link, the connection between the story, the history, and the game has got to be paramount, because I think that's what allows it to be credible in the eyes of those people that come around that table for the first time. It's not just Warhammer with World War II. It's more than that.
Yeah, it's the 7th Seaforth Highlanders. They know about the unit. It's 7 RTR with Churchills in support. They're up against 1st Leibstandarte. It's on the plateau overlooking the Orne River. It's Carpiquet Airport has just fallen. The British are on a 4-phase line objective battle to link up with the Canadians at Louvigny. These people know all this. An attack on Hill 112 is happening at the same time, just off a mile or so away, and people understand the battle, the big battlefield picture,
Mm.
and suddenly it brings it to life, and they can go, "Oh wow, I thought you just threw rocks at these figures or put bangers in the aircraft and watch stuff like that." And you go,
And then you're saying to them, and this is the lead company, this is the lead platoon, and we're
Yeah.
putting you in the shoes of the lead platoon commander. Somebody did this for real, and now it's your turn,
Yeah.
and that really kind of works.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we had, and it was lovely to see some youngsters coming forward and playing, and their parents getting involved and asking us, how does this work? And I had one lad come up to us. He was talking to Fraser, and he was asking him about where's a good place to get buildings for sharp practice, because he built up a sharp practice collection, and we were able to point him in the direction of war bases, and he was asking about basing and sabo bases and so on and so forth. And it was just brilliant to see the enthusiasm from people just discovering wargaming for the first time. But it wasn't just youngsters, it was people of all ages.
And just one more thing, Sid, that I want to throw in here. Sorry, but I think it's important, and it made me feel fantastic, so I want to share it. When we arrived, I think it was on a Thursday afternoon. Age and I had just finished setting up, and there's a few people knocking about. And a guy came past, and he said to me, he said, I can't stay, but I just want to tell you, I just want to say something to you." He said, "Last year I came here with my lad, and we played your game." He said, "And I said to you then that I think you've lit a fire inside this lad." And then he got his phone out and he said, I want to show you what he's been doing ever since. And he showed me all these photos of the World War II figures and armies that he brought up, and how he'd been using them, and he found somebody to game with, and that it was obviously, off and running. And he said it's made a massive difference to him as well, his kind of enjoyment of his hobby. And that's absolutely a great thing to hear, and it really kind of set me up on a high for the weekend, because you kind of feel, what do we do it for? What is the purpose of it? And I guess if you measure it by anything, that's one thing that you can measure it by. So I felt really great about that. I don't know his name, I don't know the lad's name, but if we do that kind of thing, then that's got to be a great outcome.
Yeah. It's just one person doing that, and you think, well, we spent 4 figures, but we've got that feedback, and actually, that it kind of makes it worth it, doesn't it?
So
And to him, I think definitely it's a massive difference.
You can't put a price on that, can you? You can't put a cost on it. We've changed somebody's life for the better. I think that's really positive. I've never done that before. I usually ruin people's lives.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just like the day Sydney walked into our lives, Rich, he changed it.
Oh God, yeah.
So what else we've been doing, Sid, is what you're going to ask, right?
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like you booked your place for the next. It sounds like you booked your place for the next few years at We Have Ways.
Well, we got a reality Carsey check.
I'm not. We'll wait and see what happens next year. But I've been to Colours. I went to Colours this year, and that was great because I haven't been to Colours for a few years. Last time we went, I think we were running a game, probably pre-Arnhem. But I went as a punter this time, just me, lonely me in the car. Went down, took the camera, did a bit of a vlog for the Patreon types, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not a huge show, and it's kind of got a mix of ground floor traders, and then I think middle floor mix of traders and games. And then is it 3 floors? Can't remember now. I'm getting confused about the layout of the racetrack. But I caught up with Dave Brown, caught up with Guy from WSS, had some good conversation with people, spent some money, spent about 120 quid on bits and pieces. And what I noticed, and I said to you guys about this, is that actually people I spoke to, you look at what people are buying, they're buying terrain items. I don't see people buying figures at shows where they used to buy figures. I don't see many people buying figures, but they're buying all the stuff around figures. But obviously the figure manufacturers are still there, and you can buy boxes of Perry's and boxes of Warlord and what have you. All the plastic stuff is there. But certainly I think the terrain sellers had a good day. Well, certainly the ones I went to did. I've got some stuff from Charlie Foxtrot, one of which I'm going to put forward as best bit on the bench. I've got some debris resin stuff from people that are making all the kind of scatter that goes on the battlefield, which is great. Good show. I enjoyed it. And the good games. Dave Brown did a Battle of Waterloo game, the cavalry charge at Waterloo in 28mm. I'm surprised the floor didn't collapse. The weight of metal that was on the table was quite colossal, especially when I was standing next to it. I suspect the stress factors must have been off the scale. But it's a good game, and so well done. Well, good day. Well done to those who organised it. It's not one we often trade at, but I thought it was quite a nice late summer sort of day out, really.
So why do you think many people are not buying figures at war game shows? That always used to be the sort of things that people used to do. They used to go to a war game show and they used to collect their figures. Have we all got too many figures?
I've got a thought on that. We can easily see figures online, and we're aware of what ranges people do. So
Yeah.
I've just bought a new Napoleonic army. I want to do Spanish Contra guerrillas based up near Barcelona with some French light troops patrolling the roads and relieving the blockhouses. I know Perry's do that range. I don't need to go to a show to discover that. So I will buy that online, which I did. Terrain, on the other hand, there's so much out there and I've got no idea who does what. So when I go to a show, I'll use a show like I used to 30 years ago for figures, who's doing what. But now it's terrain, because there's so much terrain out there. It's impossible for me to keep a track of it, really. So there's a lot. You're more likely to bump into stuff you've not come across before when you look at terrain, because we know who makes what figures. So I think that might be a factor, but I might be wrong.
No, that sounds pretty plausible. I mean, I must say, I don't think I've bought figures at a show for a while.
And yet, hang on, sorry, Sid. You go. Sorry, don't interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it is looking at new things, and it's possibly more likely because I buy metal figures because they're more robust, Richard, and we know why. I got those obviously online, but it's the little bits of terrain and scatter which I look for in the war game show, Nick.
Well, I'm sure the guys who were there selling figures would come back to us and say they had a great day, that they traded and they sold loads and loads, and I hope they did, because what I wouldn't want shows like that to become is a place where figure manufacturers are not there.
No.
And it's terrain only, because that would be a negative outcome. So I'm sure people are buying stuff. I just don't. When I see people sharing their haul of what they purchased, I just notice I don't see many figures.
It's interesting. The hobby is morphing constantly. Everything's in a state of flux and change. You know, we look at hobby stores now. You know, we think of stuff like the old curiosity shop from Dickens, where you go into this dusty old shop and there's drawers of minifigs and hinge lift. Wargame shops aren't like that anymore. They very much focus on gaming. They very much focus on a cafe environment where they provide food and soft drinks, even alcohol in the evenings for people who want to drink. They are selling the holistic experience. So that's changed. I think wargame shows are having to change. Some are changing and doing so successfully. I think we had a conversation with one of the organisers of Invictus Games in Melbourne on our Patreon channel, and they started off their show 2 years ago, and because it was new, they didn't have a template that they simply adhered to. They actually said, how are we going to make this outward looking? How are we going to attract more people to the hobby? How are we going to, what can we do to make this an effective shop window, but also make people enjoy what they're doing? And they're running a very, very attractive and successful show as a result. I think one of the downfalls of shows, especially in the UK, is that you get old and established shows who go, well, we've always done it like that, and we're going to continue to always do it like that. And they're not really evolving. And those shows are the ones that are dying.
Yeah.
And I certainly see that with shows that are based around competition events. Competition events attract people who are there to play competition games. They're not going out buying armies. They've already got the army they want. They're not going out buying terrain. I've seen the terrain on their tables. They're not buying terrain. I get in trouble for that. I don't care if I get in trouble for that, because if you're putting on an event that's meant to be a shop window for the hobby, you need to make sure it's a good looking game. So I think those shows that have got competitions as a central focus need to look at other areas, need to evolve what they're doing in other areas to make something that's more attractive. But yeah, there we go. But Sid, let me ask you a question, mate, because you usurped me. You got to go to Lard because I couldn't go there because I was going to We Have Ways Festival, and that was a tough decision to make, because Lard is one of my favourite wargaming lardy games days on the calendar, and I didn't make it. But I suppose in a way it's appropriate, because you come from the county next to Yorkshire, So it's sort of a semi-local show for you, isn't it? Next to Humberside.
Well, I actually hail from East Yorkshire, which Richard, as you know, is part of Yorkshire, as the name suggests.
I thought
Was
Humberside was the name, like Humberside
No.
Police.
Well, that is the name of the Unified Police Force. Yes,
Right.
that's right. But that's not
Yeah.
representative of the county
Mm.
because that's part of Lincolnshire as well. But we don't need to go into local police boundaries to know that it was a great show. It was a great games day, in fact. So I drove up, and it's a very long drive, as we discussed before the show started, from St Albans to just near York, which is where Ebor Lard was. But it was a really, really nice games day. It was my first, because normally I have football managerial duties, but not this year, because my son Will is just about to go off to university, so I have no more football gigs to go to ever, thank goodness.
What have you done with the sheepskin?
The sheepskin has been handed back to the club with the cones, the balls, the first aid kit, and everything else. So yeah, the Malcolm Allison sheepskin and fedora have gone, I'm afraid, for good, which is great. But no, I used my Saturday and Sunday much better last weekend to go to Eborlard. Had a great day, some fantastic games on display there, which definitely would meet your metric of looking brilliant and playing really well. So I played in Charlie's wonderful game of Kiss Me Hardy, and then John's amazing game of the Tet Offensive, which is just beautiful to look at. But I had a really good time in the evening as well. Really good day out.
I'll tell you what I like about Eborlard. It's a cracking bunch of lads.
Definitely. We had some great fun. We weren't staying in Green Hammerton. We were staying in Wixley, which is the village next door. We had to cross the fields, so myself and some of the Yorkshire contingent crossed the fields, and we had a lot of fun getting through possibly the tightest turnstile in Yorkshire, which I just about managed to get through. But I think you would struggle with, as indeed some of my compatriots on the walk did. But that was hilarious. Right. Really nice weekend.
Is that a local landmark, the tightest turnstile in Yorkshire? Because they've got some woman's cottage up the road, Ma Shipton's cottage, so they could have that and link it with a trip to the tightest turnstile in Yorkshire.
It was so tight it should have its own little blue plaque or whatever, little signpost. It was crazy tight to get through.
Yorkshire and being tight, who would have put the two together?
But it was super. It was really good fun. And I think today, or yesterday, in fact, there was clotted lard as well, which all of us missed, unfortunately, but that looked terrific. Colin was posting some really good photos of the games from there. And then in a few more weeks, we've got steel lard, and unfortunately, I can't make that either, which is a real shame. So I caught up with Richard last week and was talking about how much all of us were really missing that, because I do think that that's a really good show in a fantastic venue. But next year, I think he said that it's much more likely to be going to its normal time of early November, which should help all of us, I think.
It's weird. This year has been a disaster for me in terms of Lardy Games Days. I mean, I wasn't able to go to Eborlard. I wasn't able to go to Scotland because that's when they said to me you got lung cancer, which I didn't have. And I wasn't able to go to Clotted Lard this weekend because my daughter's just flown back from Australia for a week, and there's no way I can say, well, I'm off. Nice to see you, because I get to see her so rarely. And then I had put myself down to go to Steel Lard, and then I discovered it's the day before Partisan, where we're trading. Well, the day before we trade, I'm picking up the van, I'm loading the van up, I'm building the trade stand, and so it just was an impossibility. So I had to up stumps on that one as well, which was a shame. So it's been a bit of a disaster this year in terms of getting to game days, but hopefully we can rectify that next year and get some more back on the agenda.
Yeah, we've not done many.
I won't be there either.
Yeah, we've not done many games days this year. I was thinking that our strike rate has been really down. And I've said to Mark Backhouse that I'm going over to Southampton in late January, which might be an interesting trip, but just to sort of get back into the swing of a few more. It's been difficult for me this year because I've had so many sort of work and family commitments, but hopefully January will be better. And hopefully all of us will be able to get to one together at some point, like we used to do. Because that was
well, I'm in Australia in January, so I can't do that one. So it's kind of...
I might be up for that one. I might be in for that one, Sid. Mark did contact me on that. It's possible.
That'd be great. It looks like it looks good. Looks to be a good event. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic event. Mark's
But I
Nothing.
can't do Steel, and I can't do Partisan either because I'm going to be. We've got a group of guys going to the Hartenstein again to do some more stuff in Arnhem. So I'm going to be taking a game over there. We're taking the Used to Beat Lard railway station. We've got 3 games going on there. We've got the Used to Beat Lard game. We've got the Jasper and the guys doing the Gasworks game, and then Nick from Bavaria is doing the Ginkelheath Dutch SS on Ginkelheath. So that should be an interesting conversation at the museum. The fact that we've got the Dutch SS involved and
with a German running it.
With a German running it, so that's an interest. I'm looking forward to hearing the pin drop when that gets.
Well, Nick's a great guy, and I'm sure you'll have a fantastic time.
Absolutely, and it will be, and we should be showing these things as they are as well. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think just find it slightly amusing. It's really funny with a German there telling the Dutch audience that they were the bad guys.
Well, Richard, I know that in addition to all of your excitements that we have ways, I know you've been really busy with another publication, or at least an old publication we visited, which is actually one of my favourite of the Lard publications, which is At the Sharp End for Chain of Command. I always liked the first version that you did of that. Now, I think this is just a bit more than a mere tidy up, but it opens the door on all sorts of new possibilities. So I think that's probably the thing that you've got on the workbench for writing at the moment. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's been huge. Well, I've already touched on the fact that it kind of morphed into something else, and that's involved a vast amount of work, and we've been gaming like mad just to develop to test some concepts. I mean, they're not difficult concepts, but it just opens a door on different types of game. Because what we're looking to do is we're looking to combine At the Sharp End with Big Chain of Command. Big Chain of Command we produced years ago just as a guide to running bigger games, and typically that would be maybe we have a much wider table with the 3 of us on one side, maybe you and I, Sid, commanding a platoon of infantry and Nick commanding a platoon of tanks, and we get a bigger game as a result. But that's a wider battlefield, that's a broader battlefield. But what we looked at is depth, battlefield depth, by introducing the concept of phase lines. So what you could see is it could just be me and you, Sid, me playing the British, you playing the Germans, where I've got 2 platoons that come on consecutively. The first platoon is tasked with achieving the first phase line objective. The second platoon will then come on to try and take the second objective, the main objective of the game. Equally, it could be that all 3 of us still have our platoons side by side, but we have got several phase line objectives going forward. So the battlefield could be much, much deeper. And it introduces the concept of headquarters getting involved. So battalion headquarters, the idea that they can feed troops into battle that haven't been selected as a support, but are they're part of that battalion that are ready. So if you come across a minefield and your battalion has got engineers attached, you can call for engineers even though you haven't selected them as supports. And it just gets you involved in that with a degree of friction between higher command and grassroots command. But also presents opportunities in terms of consolidating on phase line objectives and then pushing on forward. So yeah, lots there that's been really, really exciting. And what turned into, it's a bit like Chain of Command 2, where the initial idea was, well, let's tidy this up. With At the Sharp End 2, the idea, let's tidy it up, and suddenly it became so much more. So we're following on a well-trodden path in that respect. But yeah, that's really exciting, and I've just got that to the point where it's just gone out for the proofreader, and it's gone out to some of the playtesters to check through that all the feedback they sent us back has been incorporated in that. But really, the ideas haven't changed from what we started doing. But what you do is you introduce some fairly simple but deep thinking ideas that you then have to check you're getting that message across effectively. So whereas At the Sharp End, I don't know, it was about 40 odd pages. Now we're looking at something that's about 75 pages. So it's turned into a big work, actually. Turned into a big
I've noticed with it, Rich, is a couple of things. I noticed the difference it makes to the way that you approach the game. Not so much necessarily when you're attacking, because when you're attacking, you're focusing on the tip of the spear anyway.
Yeah.
But the difference it makes to the defender is really quite interesting,
Yeah.
because in a lot of our games, you give me my assets for that game, and I'm defending that line. I tend to put all my stuff on that line. But when you go bigger chain of command with more phase lines, you get a deeper battlefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a defender, you're thinking, what do I want to put? What is my thin crust I want to put on? Do I want to, how do I defend much more in depth? And that's a really interesting tactical challenge for the player. And I've really found the defensive game particularly different and interesting when we play it that way. And the other thing is the concept of being able to move initiative between units. So as the HQ point, you can sort of reallocate effectively chain of command dice in kind of put it in the most simple form. And I like the way that creates a kind of dynamic timeline in the game. So the game that we played, for instance, with the guys from the club, I was playing the commander, and I was able to take initiative from one part and use it to gain momentum in the other. So you can that reallocation means that you can put your tactical emphasis in one particular location and put the dice, for want of a better word, that you've earned elsewhere, all your command effort can go into accelerating the advance of one particular part of the battlefield.
Yeah.
So you can create that kind of OODA loop dynamism, which is a big word to use for me this morning after being so late home. But it's enables you to get that tactical advantage going on, that momentum gained on the part of the battlefield where you want to put it, which puts you ahead of your opponent and move things on more quickly.
That tactical flexibility that leads to operational pace, I think, is the sort of thing that those elements which we saw at the gaming cafe really being represented.
Yeah, but there's a cost in doing that. If you want to shift it, if you want to shift if you want to shift emphasis from there to there, there's a cost.
There's a cost
in making that transaction. So you
benefit.
Make that decision carefully. There's no point in trying to fritter away, taking individual chain of command points and distributing them about, because it won't have an effect. You have to make big decisions. But it also creates a role for a battalion commander or company commander, however you want to view it. But it creates a role which is interesting in its own right. You don't actually have to end up controlling figures on the table, although you can as commander decide to put yourself in that battlefield and do a Rommel with your fingertips and make a difference at the Schwerpunkt. But by doing that, you're reducing what's happening, the ability of HQ to influence other things. So there's lots of decisions to be made that are really interesting without even controlling figures, because you are the artist painting the bigger picture.
But that's also about drawing your opponent into a fight in one area, and then it's almost like the maneuver of the central position, isn't it? And then you kind of are able to redirect into the other area, have that tactical flexibility that enables you to do that, and you build that up through energy created through the dynamism of the campaign.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so that's exciting. Should be out very soon.
Very good. That was my other question. When's it going to be available? But very soon is good enough for me.
Well, you're very predictable in your questioning, Sydney.
You need a new host, clearly.
Yes.
An
AI, hopefully.
AI host would be far better, far better. Anyway,
Wargaming Apollo.
Oh, well, you'll probably be able to get your AI Apollo, or AIA as it'll now be known, I'm sure. Anyway, all good stuff, and something for all lovers of Chain of Command to look forward to. Chain of Command, Richard, I think.
Oh, sorry.
But enough of this idle chit-chat, because we need to crack on with the show. We've spent far too long already. And walk the well-trodden path towards the Lard Island workshop to see what we've all been up to. Very good. We're back live in the workshop, although it does look like a library and or garden office or prison cell. But it is the workshop.
Yeah.
And
now for you charmless Nurk.
We're back to the 1970s prison drama. Well, less of that. No orange jumpsuits here, please. Oh, they didn't wear that, did they? They wore, what did they wear?
They wore like battle dress. It's almost like a battle dress they wear. It's a kind of serge kind of uniform.
Yeah.
That's right. Anyway, what have you been doing on the actual wargaming physical bits and pieces, which we can tell people about? I've got something, and I know both of you have. So who's first? Richard,
I'll
as
go
ever.
first. because I'm excited by what I've done. I've just completed my first platoon of Panzer Lehr and decided that I'm going to do a second one because I want to do big chain of command with Panzer Lehr, and that's really exciting. So I've painted those, and I had a super exciting experience, and I'm putting this up for best bit on the bench, and that's these. Dun, dun, dun. These are, and I'm reading backwards because I'm looking at them on the screen, Real Color Markers by AK. And look, this is like Ferrero Rocher. You open them up and there they are. Right, now let me show you what one, there's 2 layers in there. And this is the list of colors. Amazing. Right, this is what they look like. They're a pen. You take the lid off, you got a nib. Right, so it looks like a bit like a Sharpie. And you draw the paint on rather than you paint it on. Now, I found them really, really useful for doing lots of detailing. So if I was doing things like water bottles on the Germans, where you've got that strap going down, I just used it to slap on a lot of paint. So one of the colours they've got is rubber black, which you use for tyres. Or your GIMP masks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, what you can do with that is where the Germans have got.
I think that's Cilla Black's most unheard of sister. But yeah,
unheard of Cilla and rubber. Always a good night out with those two. So you can use that as a kind of worn black leather look, which is quite nice. So I found this to be. I would not replace my brush with these, but as a tool to do certain aspects of the jobs, like putting on puttees on the late war German ankle boots, just slap it on with a paintbrush. Putting on belts or putting on webbing, it's much easier to control with a pen than it is with a brush. So I found that. Did it improve my painting? No. Did it speed up some of the more tedious aspects of my painting? Yes. Would I use it to paint vehicles? I'm not confident enough yet. But as a tool to have, really good. The only thing I would say is some of the colours are just wrong. Just wrong. So rot brown, red brown, use that a lot for camouflage. It isn't rot brown. It comes out in a very sort of I'm just trying to think of the Vallejo colour that would best represent it. It comes out as something like a very light tan brown.
Yeah.
And that's
earth or something.
No, not even that. It's more orangey, orangey. And you think that isn't what rot brown should look like. And if you buy the AK rot brown paint, it doesn't look like that. So there's not continuity. But a lot of these colours are really nice. So on the Waffenfarbe on Panzer Lehr, I used a Japanese aircraft blue-green to give really quite vivid patches on the collars before I then painted on the white line Waffenfarbe. So, and did that on the epaulets as well. So they're really good for certain jobs. Some colours in there quite nice. Aluminium, dark aluminium. The greens tend to be really good for doing camouflage. So they're olive green. I use that. The Panzer Lehr figures normally are in field grey in that assault gun blouse tunic, but their helmets, they had a very large number of helmets which were covered with the German Wehrmacht camouflage colour, the same colour that you get on the waterproof tent sections. I can't remember.
Type thing,
So these pens were a really good way of getting that jagged line pattern on. That with a brush, I find painting those geometric shapes often a little bit beyond my abilities. So I really thought they were really good. Really enjoyed them.
I use those too with my I've got the same box and I've also got, Sydney, the metallics. They do a metallic little box of 4 or 5, so you get a bronze, a copper, a gold and a silver and a gun. I've got a gunmetal, and I found the metallic ones really quite good. So there's, you know, when you're doing the sort of the brass fittings or you get on muskets, etc. Yeah, they're really quite handy for that, because I find that metallic paint, if you're using it a lot, is really nice and easy to use. But if you don't use it that often, I often find that when you come to use metallic paint and it's kind of all stuck together and horrible, and you can't, it's either completely stodgy or it's terribly runny and thin. But these so far have worked really well in that space.
You might be using the wrong metallic paints though in that regard, but I
Yeah,
do know,
probably well.
I do know what you mean. I would love to have a go with these. I got to say, I'm slightly skeptical because I normally would think I take your point on the geometric shapes, Rich, and actually on little tiny dots, which can be quite difficult to get perfect with a brush. I'm not convinced at all because I haven't tried them yet, but I'd love to try them. I really would like to try them. I mean, I'm not completely sold on the idea of getting rid of the brushes which used for like 40 years and getting rid of some markers.
You can't mix them. You can't mix the colours together very well. You can't mix two pens together to make the different colour.
70 quid.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do an Oddcast tryout of these. I'm going to bring my brushes round. We're going to have a brush and pen off. I think that's the only thing we're going to have to do because I think this needs to be investigated more thoroughly. This sounds very interesting.
We have done some stuff on Patreon where we reviewed them, which are good. Tell you the other thing I've enjoyed doing is this. Look at this. Look at this. It's the black and white minstrels of tanks, which are probably not allowed on television anymore. But there we go. It's not. It's a black and white Solido M10, which I bought, but which I replaced the barrel with a 17-pounder barrel.
Yeah,
so this is French. Nice. Solido were these old models that they made in the 70s. This one was cast as the 40th anniversary of D-Day in 1984. Which is important for me, actually, because I was in Normandy on the 40th anniversary of D-Day. I went over on a holiday just to have a look at what was going on. So it's a bit of a trip down memory lane. But I decided to take this old model and decided to do it up. This has just been undercoated in black with a zenith coat of white on the areas that I want to have highlighted. But I was able to buy lots of stowage online for 1/48th M10 tank destroyers. The barrel is 1/48th. And I'm doing one of the big chain of command scenarios I'm doing for Panzer Lehr is when they run into a British anti-tank defence position, which is made up of M10s, both with the 17-pounder and the 75mm, but also 6-pounders. So this is Panzer Lehr on their famous attack against Bayeux on the 9th of January, where they are launching June, where they're launching a divisional attack. And it has to be called off because of events happening elsewhere. And so I really want to get them done. And I've really enjoyed taking an old model, which was unloved on eBay, and turning it into something that's going to be the centerpiece of a fabulous table. I love that type of thing. It's just good fun.
There's nothing quite like buying something or indeed finding something in your box that you've just discarded for like 30 years and turning it into a centerpiece. I'm all in favor of that. Anyway, Nick, you've got things for us before I move on to my exciting.
Well, you can't see. I'm just looking at my Trello, Sydney, that tells me what I've been doing. As you can see on my can't see.
It's just making you disappear.
Scrolling down. I can't remember when we last did one of these. Anyway, we're doing our Are You Up For It challenge, as you know. And my challenge is to get my Texan sharp practice Mexican Alamo type stuff up. And I've got a bit quiet lately on that. But the reason I've been quiet is because I've been doing loads of stuff. So I've got loads of stuff that I need to share with our patrons about that. But lots of Mexicans. What do we see? We've got carts, wagons, mule trains, more wagons, ox-drawn wagons, longhorn cattle. I've got Paul Edwards to print me now. See, I don't know if you can see these if I put this up to the camera, if I stand behind it. Can you see that there? I've got musket stacks.
Stacks.
So
very
sort
nice.
of three, we put 3 muskets together. And what I've done with them there, as you can see, is they're on that, you can see hopefully, they're on that counter base, because I'm using those MDF dial counters. For some reason, I chose to do that. I thought it'd be a nice thing to do, quite an extra figure to paint, isn't it? So I thought some of those are going to be, that idea came from Age Deacon, actually. I put some of those together, and they've been good fun. And then also for the same thing, I've got cattle. I've got some Tejano cavalry, Sid, that I've got there. And I had a bit of a nightmare with them because they went frosty on me. You know when you varnish things and they go frosty. I had these really nice figures and I sprayed them. Now, these were metal figures that I'd converted to go on plastic horses because I got given the figures and I had to make, I had to use some War Games Atlantic horses to combine them with some green stuff in the saddle area to make the riders fit on. And they look really nice. And I sprayed them varnish and I could see this horrible fogging going on. And I thought, oh no, what do I do about it? And I'd heard that if you put a wash on it, if you put a little black wash on it quite quickly, that can help resolve that. And then put another coat of brush varnish and spray again. And I've kind of tried to bring them back from the brink, and they've done okay, but they still look a little bit. I'm a little bit disappointed with that, and there's no rhyme or reason for that. And what's really interesting is that the horses fogged more than the riders.
Mm. So just well,
Why would that be? So you got a plastic horse, metal rider. The rider didn't fog as much as the horse, but the horses went a bit foggy. Why is that, Sid?
So I have a really good article, which friend of the show and great friend, generally Mark Backhouse, sent me about 4 years ago about all the chemical reasons why fogging occurs, and it's all to do with the surface of what you're spraying. So the surface can make a big difference as to why you're getting that fogging and that sort of chemical reaction. But I think generally there's 2 bits of advice I would give, and everyone will have their own views. Don't use spray on varnish. Just put it on with a brush. Don't use
don't
spray
like that
on
answer.
varnish.
Give me another one.
Okay, don't like that
answer.
one.
That is a stupid
it's
answer.
not. It's the best answer. It's the only answer. They can avoid it. But the other answer is basically you need to re-gloss the varnish. So you put the gloss varnish on, and generally that sort of helps. I think that's one of the most accepted sort of ways. Is you just start again and re-gloss it. And but it is a real pain, and it's really soul destroying when it happens. The other thing is that there's just too much varnish on. That's part of the reasons that it's gone cloudy. You just need to be so sparing with the varnish.
Yeah, I agree.
And just three coats, which are very thin, rather than one coat which is sprayed on and glunks on. Because you think, oh, I'm going to put one big coat on, and that's going to be protection against people's big fat fingers. But actually, what you really want is 3 or 4 really thin coats of varnish. And I generally sort of, dare I say, you have a latex glove on, so you take all the varnish off by brushing it onto the latex glove. So when you actually varnish, there's hardly any varnish on the brush.
I'm out, Sydney. Why have you got a latex glove on? You some kind of Alvin Stardust tribute wargamer?
That's
No,
exactly
simply because
my thought. The
no,
Alvin Stardust of wargaming.
No, I just don't want a load of polyurethane varnish on my skin. So you put on a latex glove, and then you can see it's a black latex glove, so you can see
But
exactly.
Why only one hand?
Because I've got a paintbrush in my other hand. It's only the hand which you're going to brush the varnish off the brush with onto your hand. I mean, you can of course do it on a paper towel or something like that, but you're going to take fibers off the towel. But if it's a latex glove, you're going to take nothing off the latex glove.
Do you use latex gloves and paper towels for all one-handed tasks?
No. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm only talking about painting.
Just a thought.
I've got no idea what you're talking about. Got no idea at all. Right, my product is wholesome, and it's very small. And actually, it's from Green Stuff World.
Breathe. Sorry.
It's from Green Stuff World, and is a very it's a It's from Green Stuff World, and is a selection of transparent bottles. And you know, if you go online with the kids, they'll show you how to sort of paint liquid
those?
in bottles, because they're perfect. If you have a tavern scene, 3 Musketeers or something like that, you think, well, you know, you've got a selection of.
So these
bottles.
are scale. These are tiny scale.
These are
bottles.
tiny scale bottles. These are
hold them up there again.
Well, these are little tiny,
I've
tiny
seen
scale
those
see-through bottles. So you know you can throw those across the tavern. You can have a base of those, and they look like empty bottles that can be thrown at your opponents or displayed around on the floor of a tavern scene. They're all empty. They've been drunk out of. And
looks like a recycling bin on my Monday morning.
Well, exactly. We can replicate your kitchen, Richard. That'd be absolutely. So they're fantastic and they're great fun. It's just one of those small little things that you can use to enhance any scene. I'm sure there's other providers, but I got mine from Green Stuff World for a very reasonable price with some green stuff rollers. And stuff.
Like Green Stuff World.
I love Green Stuff World. And the service is unbelievably fast from Spain. There's no
really good
with them. They are on the ball.
They're on the ball. I bought some other bits and pieces as well. just like tiny little animals to put around bases. So in a Japanese theme thing, I've got some spiders, some scorpions, some frogs. So you can put a couple of little creatures around the base to delineate who's a bad guy and who's a good guy. What are they? I think they're scorpions. So if you've got a scorpion scuttling around your feet, you know you're a bad guy. But maybe if you've got a frog scuttling around your feet, who knows what you are.
Fluffy bunny, mate. That's what you need, fluffy bunnies.
That sort of thing. That sort of thing. It's whimsical, but I thought the best of the bunch was the bottles themselves. They're really good value.
Nice.
They're only about €3 for about 20 or so, and really nice to enhance any scene. So anyway, moving on, we've got. I don't know what yours was, Nick, but loads of Mexican.
Well, best bit on the bench. Well, I didn't actually mention it, but one of the things I picked up at Colours. Actually, did I get this from Colours? No, I bought this from Charlie. I bought it beforehand. But Charlie Foxtrot, and good news that he's been able to sell the company as well. By the way, really good. Well done, Colin. Charlie Foxtrot do a pergola. Now, again for my Mexican Sid. I've got this building that I'm turning into what we're calling the Haribo, which is a kind of compound. But I'm starting to think about how I'm going to bring that compound to life. So I bought two. I bought two pergola actually, and pergola, yeah, whatever the plural is, and they are really, really lovely. They're basically two. I think it's 3 mil MDF.
Yeah,
it's kind of there's not a lot to it, but it's really dead easy and sort of went together in about 30 seconds, and it's a really chunky piece of proper terrain. It's not like a pergola that's made out of tiny wispy bit of plastic. It's really solid, and it's going to look great when I put it on that side of that Haribo.
I just looked at it on their website. 6 mil, 3 mil, and 2 mil MDF. 6 mil MDF, that would survive a nuclear war.
Yeah, it's really nice. Very, very nice indeed. Yeah, 6 mil, that's probably about right. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll put that forward because actually, I mean, Colin, his stuff is really, really robust, and I love the way that the thought that he puts into to making it. It's really durable. They're big items as well, but they're really lovely. And I think for me, that's the best bit on my bench lately. That's a bit that made me, when I opened it, thought, wow, this is really nice. I'm really impressed by the way this goes together and think what I can do with it. So that would be my best bit. But your bottles, Sid, look really quite nice.
They're not the best bit on the bench, though, are they? God almighty, plastic bottles, you bloody idiot.
Well, you can imagine,
nice.
you can imagine just how perfect it would be in a melange of all of our things to have the wonderful Charlie Foxtrot pergola painted with your AK pens with a few empty bottles strewn around, the scene of a classic Mexican taverna. I mean, we've come together, guys, in a beautiful blend of different bits on the bench there.
Symbiotic.
But which is the best? Which is the best, though?
Well, if I'm honest, I don't have enough experience to say these are the best bit on the bench. They're a good additional tool. 70 quid is a lot of money. You can buy little packs of 3 or 4. I'd probably go down that route, but I bought these so I could review them.
The metallics are good. The metallic ones I've got are good. I've got that same box as you, Rich, and some of them you kind of think, actually, this isn't giving me the color I want or the coverage I want.
Yeah, exactly. But I found that the metallics were too bright.
Oh, interesting.
I really want my gunmetal to be black, but with a sheen.
Gunmetal is quite silvery, yeah.
Yeah, it's too silvery for me. Sometimes wargamers expect something, and you have to give them what they expect. Gunmetal. Wargamers often think gunmetal is bright and shiny. It's not.
It's not.
It's not. But yeah, if I'm honest, having just looked at that pergola, that's almost a perfect piece, isn't it? Are these perfect? No. Are his bottles perfect? No, they're trivial nonsense. Is your pergola perfect? Yeah, it is, isn't it? I really like it because I'm just going to be I'm waiting for some figures to come through from the painter for sharp practice because I haven't had them yet, and I'm going to be going to the peninsula. I've got a load of building some war bases for that in MDF, which I'm really looking forward to doing build videos on. But that pergola could really enhance any of those buildings, and it could be in Spain, it could be in Italy, it could be
Well, and the footprint of it's about the size of an iPhone, kind of footprint. But actually, you could cut that in half and have sort of 2 half pergolas over a doorway or whatever. That would look really quite nice. It's quite versatile as well, provided you cut through the 6 mil MDF.
Well, Blots have bought Charlie Foxtrot, which means that Colin is still going to be producing designs for them, and they're still going to be available. I really like Blots. I really like their use of 3 mil MDF. or thicker MDF for models. So I'm really pleased that that has worked for Colin, and I hope we can see more of his quality designs coming out in future.
Absolutely.
Really,
Absolutely.
really great design.
And the blot stuff is great already. There's some really, really nice stuff that they do. So that is a marriage made in wargaming heaven. Anyway, so I think we have a winner. It's probably Nick's. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Colin. Well done, Nick, for bringing that to everyone's attention. That's excellent. Well, we're running into the time scheduling, so we need to wander back to the studio rather quickly, because there we have our big issue to be discussed on the sofa of sincerity.
Sydney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Sydney Roundwood's sofa of sincerity.
Welcome back. Get comfortable, guys. There's a couple of new cushions there and a rather nice throw to wrap yourselves in. Well, when we're looking for a big issue to discuss, we frequently go to our post bag, which is a veritable array of different questions from people all over the world. And this week, actually, I had an email from Olaf Pedersen in Kvalsund, right up in the Arctic north of Norway. Hello, Olaf. Olaf asked, I've recently started playing Chain of Command after years of playing another World War II game, and me and my friends have been blown away by the game. I had heard that it was really historical, but it's also very dynamic and cinematic too. We were interested in how you represent elite troops, which is quite different from what I've experienced before. The combination of a number of different mechanisms, such as the red dice, the force morale tracker, and the use of single sixes, allows a real mix of high-quality unit types as opposed to the one-size-fits-all elite status. What we also found really interesting is that some of the more high-profile units are not just automatically given the elite rating. Typically, Wargames rules rate the SS units as elite. I was wondering if not rating SS as elite was a conscious decision that you made when designing the rules, or is it simply that you don't like to rate units which are seen as the bad guys as being elite? Well, thank you, Olaf. That was a great question. It touches on the issues of both wargaming cliches and wargaming tropes. Do we as wargamers have expectations that the game designers feel obliged to follow, such as, well, all SS are elite? It asks the very real question of whether we're in an era now of making some units less likely to be elite, as it might offend some sensibilities, or do we just go with the historical rating? So I know both of you are big World War II players, and both of you have played and collected elements of some of the more grisly parts of World War II, like the Waffen SS. But Richard, this is a question from Olaf that I know you'll have some strong views on.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? I think SS troops being elite is one of the most enduring wargaming myths, but so is British Paras and so is US Airborne, and all of these units are somehow viewed as being sexy and superior, or consequently get the elite tag. And we thought about elite for a long time, and we felt that elite, just calling it elite and having rules for elite, was actually a bit of a lazy way of handling it. I mean, history tells us that units were far more variable in their performance than most war games rules ever allow for. So, in 1940 and 41, the SS units performed woefully. I mean, they had poor equipment, often equipment that they'd had to source from other conquered countries because the army weren't allowing them to get their equipment from them. But more importantly, they had really poor leaders who owed their rank to their status within the political movement, not due to any military aptitude. And staff work in the divisions was sort of execrable as a result. And you see that they do develop in time because they are used a lot. They are thrown into the line wherever there are issues, and that they are going to develop some skills. And like most military units, poor commanders are weeded out or die, frankly. But I mean, in truth, there were situations where some units that we consider elite performed very well indeed, but there were other situations where they don't perform very well indeed. With the SS, if you look at the higher numbered divisions, especially where they're not German, where maybe they're Volksdeutsch or they're recruited in some of the conquered territories, their buy-in is significantly less than the Germans, and consequently, it's often just a badge of convenience that they've agreed to wear, because maybe they've got another agenda. I mean, you look at the Baltic states and look at the Latvians and Lithuanians and Estonians, and often the reason they were joining the German military was that they didn't like the idea of the Russians coming back, and so they were fighting for something, but they weren't fighting for Nazi Germany. They had a different objective. But equally, there's always a lot of talk about the SS Charlemagne with the French, and what a sexy unit there. And everybody likes the idea of somebody smoking a Gaulois as they casually fire off another Panzerfaust at a T-34. But really, I mean, Charlemagne was rolled over within 24 hours in Pomerania. It just didn't perform as an elite unit again, and it was shattered into so many bits that the fragmented division was never able to reassemble. And you get individual stories about people doing crazy things in the ruins of Berlin. But isn't there an issue that troops with their back to the wall become more elite because their backs are to the wall? Look at the British Paras at Arnhem. Was that because they were better trained than 6th Airborne in Normandy, or was it because they were just in a shit situation, and in that situation you have to dig a bit deeper into your reserves and fight a bit harder? So I think the whole elite thing is potentially a bit lazy, just to go elite +1.
I would suggest there's a lot of things there to unpack, but I'm going to go to Nick first, because I've got some views on this which are a bit different. But anyway, carry on, Nick.
Elite's an elusive term, isn't it? So the way you're talking about it there, Rich, is that elite is a term that's describing high performance, right? If something performs to an elite, it performs to its elite abilities. So you'd argue that British Airborne in Arnhem are not elite, but you might argue that 6th Airborne in D-Day actually achieved stuff that you would ascribe to eliteness, whatever that means. So what does it mean to be elite? And then so you've got the elite troops, and then it's a situation that enables them to do it, isn't it? So what makes troops more likely to be elite, right? Well, it's about their purpose, isn't it? They're kind of motivated. They're well trained. They know what they're doing. They believe what they're trying to do, and they know how they want to do it. They're motivated. They're either indoctrinated, for want of a better word, or they're trained. They are highly trained at what they do. You've got people in there that know what they're doing, who know how to do it. They know what the skills are. Rich, you want to try and make a point? Go for it.
Esprit de corps. De corps is the term. Now you can create esprit de corps by telling people they're elite without training. But very rapidly, they will discover that they're not elite, and then their morale will fall through the floor. Yeah. But if you train people well and you also motivate them, then and also there's an experience in battle. If you send a unit into battle and it's completely wiped out in its first action, you're never going to develop any esprit de corps. Troops have to be introduced into combat and be able to. It's a bit like when you go on the sporting field. You have to play yourself in. You stand at the crease with a cricket bat. You need a couple of overs to play yourself in.
Well, that's challenged now, do you? Right. So that's an underlying belief, which is kind of sometimes that those elites shatter that belief, don't they? But so they certainly believe it. They're certainly motivated, indoctrinated, sign up to it, and it could be a values belief. We are fighting for what we believe in. However that's created within them, whether it's a kind of national thing or a political thing or both. And they're highly trained. Elite troops tend to be the ones that are best trained. It's quite unusual to get an elite group that doesn't have the training or experience that it needs to be elite. They generally have access to what they need. So they generally got the access to the best resources. We talk all the time about SS getting the cherry pick of new tech and weapons and equipment or whatever. So they generally got what they need to get the job done. And they know what to do. Their leadership, their low level leadership, is really, really important. Their ability to make those kind of decisions, the command tactic, the intent. I know what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. And the NCOs and junior leaders are all lined up to do that. Those all things need to be in place pretty much. And Sid, I've spoken before about my Swiss cheese model of eliteness. So only when you get, and this is situational, right? Which is why some troops are elite in some situations, but not in others. But only when you get that tactical ability, the leadership ability, the organizational adaptability, the logistical support, the communication systems, and the situational awareness, and all that kind of stuff, and the resources, when they all line up, you get eliteness. If one of them doesn't line up, it doesn't happen. And that's why I think the Paras at Arnhem, you can't say they perform elitely because one of those things is missing.
But you get gradations of eliteness. You don't need all 5 planets to line up, and only then you get the magical moment where that unit becomes elite. But there are percentages of eliteness, and this is why the term elite is a misnomer, because you can have troops. Yes, I dislike it as well. You can have troops who are modestly trained but have fabulous leadership. And if let's take Hitlerjugend in Normandy as an example, because I've been bumping into them a lot because of my research onto Panzer. They have an interesting training program, and I've been reading a lot about how they were trained. There's no drill. They're not doing drill. They're not doing classroom exercises. They're not doing fire lane exercises. They're doing exercises in battlefield conditions that try and replicate what they're going to be expecting on the battlefield. But also they've taken a cadre of really experienced leaders from veteran units. So that having that veteran leadership cadre is a really important part in establishing an esprit de corps, because they come from units, or more to the point, one unit, which is 1SS, Leibstandarte. They come from a unit where they definitely have that esprit de corps. Whether we like them or not, they believe themselves to be an elite, and they attempt to replicate that within 12SS. Now, there's a lot of issues with 12SS that we don't like. We talk about them shooting Canadian and British prisoners. And I've discovered the story behind that. And that really started off with Panzer Lehr, where Panzer Lehr artillery officers being captured and by the Inns of Court regiment with their armoured cars. And because they couldn't take them away as prisoners, they roughed them up and tied them to the outside of the armoured car because they wanted to take them back as prisoners, because they had a major and a colonel. And these are high value prisoners. They want to get them back. The Germans refused to sit on the armoured car and be driven back. So they got a few slaps and they got tied to the vehicle. The Germans thought that they were being used as human shields. And all of a sudden you get into this, well, aren't they terrible, and therefore we're going to be terrible. And you kind of expect that of the SS, because you go, oh, they're evil, they're Nazis. But actually, the Germans have historically had a very strong opinion of what is right and what is not right in warfare. And you see this in the First World War, where they're doing stupid things like shooting Edith Cavell. I mean, how was that a clever idea, to shoot a nurse? But, bang her up for the duration, but don't shoot it. But you also see it in the Franco-Prussian War, where the Prussian army are taking French civilians as hostage and saying, if anybody sets a light to the telegraph poles, you're all going to be shot. So the Germans have got a history of this, and it's in their culture, because they believe very strongly about what is legal in war and what is not legal in war. And these things all create circumstances in which bad things happen.
I'm biting my lip a bit there, mate, because I think that there's more to the SS atrocities than
there is. But what's different is the Canadians get to a point where, because of what's happening, the Canadians will not take SS men prisoner. However, what the Germans do at the Abbaye d'Ardenne is they take the Canadians prisoner. They send them back to meet the commanding officer of the reconnaissance battalion, because he speaks English. And then, having interrogated them, they line them up against the wall, send them to an NCO who's experienced in Russia, and tell him to kill them all. Now, that's very different to refusing to not take a prisoner, because by that point in time, and this is my point, the 12SS dare not surrender because they believe they're going to be shot. So by behaving in that manner, you create circumstances in which your opponent and the Canadian troops would not surrender to them. because they felt that they were going to be shot. So you create a situation where your actions almost result in your enemy behaving in a more die in a ditch manner because of the atrocities that have been committed.
But that's not elite. That does
No,
that's
that
not
isn't
makes it
elite. But
you
it
can
is.
argue that the Nazis, the Nazis are committing genocide across Europe. They're wiping out that,
Totally.
but they're indoctrinated in their belief
Totally.
of what that
So,
means and why
but-
they're doing it,
but
and
this is-
that can be a motivation for their elite.
Yes. So you've got that
Despicable though it might be.
Yes, but you've got that indoctrination, and then on top of that, you've created a circumstance where nobody is going to take prisoners.
Yeah.
Is not surrendering a feature of an elite unit.
But that doesn't make it brutal. It doesn't make it elite. It just makes it brutal.
Yes, it does make it brutal. Yes, it does, but also not surrendering, like the British at Arnhem. What they did that was exceptional was not to show exceptional leadership and dynamism, but what they did was not surrender. And that in itself is bravery.
I think you'd argue that they surrendered in large numbers at Arnhem. A lot of them go into the bag, don't they?
A lot of them go into the bag, but ultimately they keep fighting for longer than other units would.
They do as a unit, after they break on the 19th there and they go back to the perimeter, they then defend the perimeter. They then get the kind of backs to the wall mentality, and they dig deep. Their resilience digs deep.
Exactly.
And they do, and that some of that does come from their esprit de corps. And they achieve that in that situation. They don't have great communications, they don't have great logistics, they do have good training, they do have good junior leaders. So they've got some of the characteristics that you might argue could make them elite.
And I am suggesting that rather than saying, do we think this is an elite unit? Is it trained well? What we have to do is look at their performance historically and say, not why did they perform this way, but we should say, how did they perform? And the point I'm making is that these people might be despicable and these circumstances might happen, but it potentially creates a situation which contributes to their performance. And this goes back to what I was saying about there are several factors that make up elite. Leadership is really important, but also so is the mentality of the men. I'm just not prepared to back down. That in itself is a form of eliteness because it influences the performance. It makes them stick around for longer and fight harder.
But you get this curve, don't you, where that performance peaks and then goes down the other side. So look at the experience of some of the US airborne divisions, where you've got their rise to prominence, if you like, and then sort of maximum eliteness that arrives in sort of D-Day Market Garden. And then after that, you've got, where they've had high rates of attrition in their junior leaders, etc. They become quite sticky, don't they? Organizations become quite sticky because they become risk averse. And then they're still elite, right? Because they still got all those characteristics, and yet their performance is not quite as elite as it was.
They're not elite.
Well,
but what is the?
Or are they? Or are they?
Well, that's the problem with the word elite, because it fails to fulfill. How do they perform? Look at 7th Armoured Division, who were taken from North Africa. And Monty said, well, they did a great job for me there, so they're going to do it again in Normandy. Yeah. No, they didn't. They weren't interested. They were pissed off that they felt that they were being overutilized, and too many demands were being. We've done our bit. Let somebody else have a go. That was a huge error of judgment on his part. But again, traditionally, we'd say they're an elite unit. No, they're not, because they don't perform as an elite unit. So what I'm saying is battlefield circumstances and overall operational circumstances can combine to make units perform in a manner that we would call elite, or make them perform in a manner that we would is less than we expect of them.
But our luxury is that we apply the label retrospectively. So we can talk about units and say they were elite because they did perform in that way. But before they go into an action, you look at your troops that you've got and how on their, you say, well, the British Brigade of Guards, they're an elite unit because they've got all the resources. They've got the best leadership. They've got the best men. They've got the best, the kind of the heritage is fantastic. You'd say they're elite. And you put them in contact with the enemy, you don't know what's going to happen. Because it kind of depends who they're up against as well, because the enemy gets a vote. So going into an action, a unit could be considered elite, and then you soon find out it ain't, but we're kind of looking at it from both perspectives. We want them to be elite because they're the brigade of guards, and then we want them to perform elitely. But that doesn't always happen, does it?
No.
Your,
It's
your
kind of
perspective is critical in that regard, because I'm not
yeah,
entirely sure any of this discussion of eliteness is applicable to anything other than the mere tactical performance of a unit. Because if you're a commander, your eliteness really is a political dimension as well. So operationally,
okay.
which is what you're thinking of as a commander, is much more important. And strategically, eliteness, I don't really think plays a part. What you're looking for as a commander is reliability. So, for instance, Viet Cong or the Khmer Rouge would be elite troops for the commanders because they are utterly politically reliable, even though they're not particularly well trained, have poor logistics, and they're tactically inept. But they are elite from a political perspective, and all war is inherently political. So I would say none of these dimensions of eliteness really matter. They are gradations of training effectiveness or tactical effectiveness. They are not elite in the context of who's actually calling the shots.
Yes, I love that, Sid.
But
I've never said that before.
But we are talking about a tactical game.
All war is political, Richard. So you are talking about a tactical game, but you're viewing it solely from the tactical perspective.
But reliable is a word I can get to grips with. Reliable is a much more useful word.
And your commanders on the your commanders on the tabletop have given you a mission in chain of command, but ultimately there's a dimension there which is a political dimension, and the eliteness and the identification of which formations are elite is a distinction which has been taken out of your hands as a tactical commander. You know, those units which have been used, whether it's the 12th SS or Florian Gaya or however inept you might be as regards the SS tactically or morally, they are used as political weapons, because that's the context in which they've been deployed. There's a reason why 12th SS are there.
And it's where leadership becomes a force multiplier. If you have reliable troops combined with inspirational leadership, then you get the kind of magic. The magic relationship happens. That's when the magic occurs. If you get reliable troops with a reliable leader, they're reliable. But the two go together. If you can get the leader who can take advantage of the tactical opportunities that arise before him, then you can get reliable troops to do inspirational elite things and behave like elite troops. Maybe
it's interesting your political point, because I bought some couple of books on SS Viking in eastern Poland at the time of Bagration, and Viking get all the kit, they get all the toys. And really, you look at what they're doing, and they're thrashing around, attacking in one direction and attacking in another direction. And they've got the propaganda company there with their film cameras, and the propaganda company is getting images of Panther tanks blowing up IS-2s and blowing up T-34s and stirring images of men in half-track zooming forward into action. But when you look at that in the background of what's happening in Bagration, it's utterly irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant, because the collapse of the German army in the east is so complete. Getting a few shots for the Wochenblau news report of German troops advancing is inconsequential. It is political.
It's military. It's militarily inconsequential. But it's not a military war solely. It's a war of national will. It's an intensely political, existential struggle. So that information, that's why those propaganda news reporters are with exactly that unit, because it's a political formation just as much as it's a military formation.
And you see that very much in Normandy. Actually, and one of the reasons I painted up my SS troops recently is that I've returned to gaming in Normandy, and it's very difficult to wargame Normandy without putting yourself up against one or another SS formation, because they did the heavy lifting, and they did it because they needed to be in the spotlight as the poster boys for the oppressive and abhorrent regime.
And that's exactly why morally it's challenging to use those formations on the tabletop.
I don't find that challenging.
Well, they're not just deployed there militarily. they're deployed there as a political tool as well,
Mm.
because politically the generals are having to use them, but political ideology is at the heart of their existence.
And it's
So
interesting.
I'm not saying it's
Mm.
impossible. We've all commanded those formations, but I do think that it is, if one thinks that ideology is abhorrent, and I would,
Yeah,
it
cool.
does raise some moral questions which you don't get with other troops.
That's very true, but it's also interesting how it conforms with the experience of the Great War with the Germans, the way the Germans categorised their divisions in the Great War. You know,
Yes.
rather than taking a homogenous
Exactly.
approach as the British Army did, where they attempted to keep all units up to fighting strength, all units able to function in a identical duplicate manner, the Germans accepted in the First World War that you couldn't do that, and they had some fortress divisions which were simply only able to hold the lines. And if you go into the Second World War, they have different degrees of battle capability, where they focus on reinforcing those units and keeping them fighting fit, and that is hugely to the detriment of the other units who literally are bled dry. And that's politically driven. That's certainly politically driven, because they feel it important to have some flagship poster boy units that can still be seen to be doing to be having successes. But that's the nature of a totalitarian regime. They have to feed their population with successes, or the support disappears completely, and then they collapse. Even if they have got the absolute power that National Socialists had or the Communists had, they still have to keep the people entertained and give the people something that they can believe in.
That's a really interesting point about the First War, because the creation of all of those Stosstruppen and Stormtruppen,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of shrouded in the myths of the nascent Third Reich and Nazi ideology.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the creation of those units by people like Ludendorff
Mm.
was really to try and get a win, to make something decisive, which has its own political objective. And then it's interesting how that's really molded through the 1920s, especially people like Younger, to be something that it wasn't necessarily. It becomes used and approximated with Nazi ideology because that's a suitable token of what they can achieve. But I think
it was an acceptance of failure, wasn't it? It was an acceptance of the fact that the army could not be maintained at the battle ready level, so they had to maintain some units at a battle ready level.
Yeah.
And what that then creates is a model for the Second World War, where they're doing exactly the same thing, where they've got certain units like Panzer Lehr hugely oversupplied with equipment.
But I think it's interesting.
It's hugely oversupplied by comparison with other units.
But through history, you get these elites which are created, and that's a good word to use them, because inherently there's something which is always political about them. You know, whether it's a situation like, you know, Harold and his Huscarls, or you've got 17th century Polish Hussars. I mean, these are the elite of the nobility, or the nobility who can be relied on. 15th, 16th century French gendarmerie, you know, they were a formation which the king could rely on. They are the ones who are going to politically enable the monarch or the sovereign or the ruler to keep their throne. And through history, you've always got these situations that these formations aren't necessarily best trained or equipped or led, or even, you know, of a morale level that is superior to other troops, but they serve a key function, which is within those regimes. They are reliable. They are politically reliable. And that's why the war's been fought. You know, you look at all the wars in the world at the moment, they are political expressions, you know, and that's why you'll always have elite troops. But that's elite. That's not the same as being elite in a tactical sense, I would suggest.
Your conversation about the First World War and the rise of the stormtroopers and all that kind of stuff, the Stormtrooper. The interesting thing about that called to my mind, Sid, is that how often in history do we kind of expect that coup de grace to be delivered by the elite element of the army, whatever that might be, whether it's the Praetorian Guard who will, there'll be a battle that will kick off, and then the Praetorian Guard will gear up and squash everything before them, or whether it's the Huscarls or the most chivalrous group of knights, or whether it's the Imperial Guard. Once the Imperial Guard are committed, they're committed to win it. These are the elite guys who are going to do the job for us. And what if you don't have that? What if you just got a group of blokes and there's nobody in it who's any better than anybody else? Does that feel that you've got nothing else to give the action? It kind of, the sort of motivation of well, how we, hurrah, these guys are gonna win it for us because here come the Imperial Guard. I think the army needs it. I think the army needs to have people of that elite. If they don't have that, then it's a feeling of worthiness as a command that's quite challenging, one would think.
But again, look at Napoleon Bonaparte. Look at Imperial Rome. They have these elites because of political reliability. So I remember watching a program on television where I think it was called Game of War, and they refought Waterloo, and the officer commanding wanged the Imperial Guard through the middle and smashed the British. Like, Napoleon couldn't have done that. He needed the Imperial Guard.
When did he ever do that?
To guarantee his position and the position of his regime. And Hitler's the same. Hitler and Rome, the Praetorian Guard, were not committed to battle, or rarely committed to battle, because they needed to secure the power of the throne, because they're effectively in power without the support of the people over whom they're ruling. They have imposed themselves on those people, and that's what you get. That's what you get with unpleasant totalitarian regimes. In a democracy, and let's take Britain as an example, in the Second World War, you don't have elite infantry division. You do have some elite units doing unusual thing, LRDG, SAS, but nobody really finds a place for them in the structure. And the British units are homogenous, and they all perform in a fairly ordinary way.
But the British wouldn't have defined LRDG in 1941 as being elite. Right? No. You wouldn't have heard the establishment calling that.
But nobody would have heard of them.
But the thing is that all these elites, the Praetorian Guard, the old guard, we believe they're elite because we're told they're elite and that they've got all the stuff. But actually, they're not. We don't get to see them being elite. Because you're saying the Praetorian Guard are never committed. The old guard, the old guard at Waterloo throws them forward. They don't bloody win either. They're no more elite than the other guy. They don't behave in that elite format.
But this is where I come back to my point and saying circumstances like the fact that you think your opponent is going to shoot you, or like you think, well, we're trapped here in Oastbeek, we've got nowhere to go. Those circumstances mean that on the day you think, oh bollocks, I'm just gonna sit here and keep shooting, as opposed to surrender or give up.
So it's the psychological impact on the enemy.
The psychological effect of circumstances have as much importance as whatever your cat badge is.
Yeah. But the psychology on the enemy as well. If you know that the enemy's about to throw their elite Imperial Guard at you, then it does have an effect on you potentially. As to, do you feel you can stand in the front of these odds, because you might feel the odds suddenly shifted in favour of the enemy, without actually anything else having changed. You hear you're up against an elite SS division. How does that affect the way that the battle's going to go, purely on where you feel you can or can't take advantage of it? You feel you can beat them, or you feel you can't beat them. When a small football team takes the field against Liverpool, what happens?
Well, you're either overawed by it and you perform badly, or you dig in and try and find reserves and try and match your opponent. I'm not interested in Wendy Roundball, but there's been plenty of circumstances in the FA Cup, which is the opportunity for small teams to play that, not in the final, but throughout the qualifying stages, for small teams to play large teams. And you get teams like Northwich Victoria and all these strange Northern Premier League clubs who keep popping up and performing way beyond, not regularly, but once in a generation. Your local football team will perform remarkably well in the FA Cup qualifying. And that's because they're not overawed. Some teams are overawed, some aren't.
But that's in a situation that your team, which is the bigger of the teams, using that word advisedly, that doesn't stop being elite just because it loses, because that team is so much a creation of its finances,
but it
of its corporate arrangements. No, that's right. But then elites don't. The whole point of elites is that they are elite not just on the battlefield, because there is an extra dimension which is there. Take the new model army as a really good example. That is a political and a religious construct. And when the protectorate has fallen, and nobody takes leadership of that. You know, the political and the religious aspects kind of fall away, and the new model disintegrates under Lambert in 1659. It just disintegrates. Its role of its political role is just nowhere there. Nobody's taken that forward at that point. The soldiers don't stop being good or being trained or being organised, but there's just no will politically to fight.
As wargamers, I think we've got to be really careful about the term elite, because we need to understand what it includes. Because I should not get a +1 just because I am elite, right?
Or wearing black.
I might get a bonus because my leaders, because I've got better resources, right? Or I've got a higher. Perhaps I get better powder because I'm a better, I'm more heavily resourced as a unit. I get more investment in my logistics. Maybe I arrive at the battle more fresh because I get better food. What is it that makes me elite? That's what should give me the bonus in the rules. That's what should give me the ability to turn that attribute to my advantage on the field of battle. If I have good leaders and I use them well, I've got the opportunity to be elite. But I just should not be elite just because of the label.
It's interesting, actually, when you look at the story of what happened at the l'Abbaye d'Ardenne with 12 SS and the Canadian prisoners. They lined them up to shoot them in the back of the heads, under the orders of a guy called Wilhelm Munker, who actually has got a terrible track record. He was involved in a massacre at Wormhout in 1940, and he was also involved in several significant massacres on the Eastern Front, and it's terribly sad that he escaped justice. He was never brought to justice for his war crimes trials, and I feel really strongly about that, because he ordered the massacres but wasn't present when they happened. So these SS troopers, mainly 17-year-old boys, were told to shoot the Canadians in the back of the head. And after the first few had been shot, the Canadians turned round to face their attacker, and that really spooked the young SS lads and really shook them. So I would suggest that you may well tell those 12 SS boys that they have esprit de corps and they've got great training and they're elite, but getting them to create that, getting them to perform that bestial act by the bravery of those Canadians who, in the face of death, turned round and stared them in the eye, that would have persuaded those boys they weren't elite, and the people who they were up against were braver men than they were. So behaving in that fashion is counterproductive. And actually, you see that after about a month of Canadians not taking any prisoners, which wasn't difficult because the SS Hitlerjugend refused to surrender because they knew what they'd done had put them in that position. So the Canadians weren't taking prisoners, and the Germans were shooting prisoners. After about a month of it, both sides came to the conclusion this is counterproductive and we've got to stop doing it. Unfortunately, you still get individual cases. You're always going to get that in warfare, but it is such a counterproductive thing to do, and it does not persuade troops that they are elite when they're being used as assassins and murderers.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So
counterproductive, but and I feel very strongly about the issue of legality in warfare, which so many people don't understand. You know that warfare is probably the concept of legal killing is the closest thing to murder that you'll get, but there's a difference. Killing in warfare is legal because whereas killing outside warfare is murder. And it's important to differentiate between the two, because you cannot make all soldiers murderers. But that doesn't mean that some soldiers are not murderers as a result of illegal actions taken on the battlefield. And legality in warfare is a really, really important factor. And but there is some grey areas.
I think you're aligning those two concepts unnecessarily. I don't think that murderous aspect and elitism need to go together.
I'm not talking about elitism now. I'm just talking about legality of killing, and we have to recognise that.
I thought that was the big issue.
Even in war, well, yeah, but I've strayed onto something else. Even in war, there are actions which are legal, and there are actions which is illegal.
It's interesting that you're using the word legality, but I think that a lot, and that is important. I mean, think about the Lusitania, think about all of those actions which brought America into the war, in both world wars. But there's also a legitimacy point, which is not necessarily legality, but in some respects is just as important, like the rape of Louvain in 1914, and the way in which British propaganda really exploited Germans' looseness and the malleability of their legality in things like unrestricted submarine warfare. I mean, the British were experts in doing that in the First World War, and extremely adept in doing that in the late 30s and the 1940s as well. There's a legitimacy aspect to a lot of the uses of inherently political organizations in warfare, and you see that time and time again through history. These political units, these elites, tend to be used in the most difficult of circumstances because they are politically reliable. That's also the friction point at which a lot of the concerns with legitimacy in the cause actually comes to the fore as well.
Well,
So
it's interesting. So every time we do an Oddcast, I come here to talk about toy soldiers, and I end up having a lesson in philosophy from some Melvin Bragg type individual. So full marks, you mate. You certainly showed us a full spectrum of concepts and ideas there.
That wasn't the intention. It's just
Oh, it was
mere
good.
host.
No, it was good.
Mere host.
Well,
we should really thank Olaf for such a great question and for sharing that with us. And that's all we have tonight, I think, to thank you, dear listener, as always, for joining us. And we'll be back for the next Oddcast in our time. Unfortunately, though, Roger is with us after the AI aberration of last time, so we can enjoy his fantastic band playing us out. And all that's left for me now is to say thank you to Rich and to Nick for another great show, and for Roger to play us out. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
In tonight's show, Sydney Roundwood, joined by Skinner and Richard Clark. Music by Roger Barraclough and his band.